Hey everyone, just returned from Gencon and wanted to give my report of how it went this year. For those of you who might not know, Gencon is North America's largest gaming event, and we're talking about board games, not so much video games. And my son and I go every other year and had a great time. So I wanted to give you a report with what games were really found to be really fun. So this year I didn't end up getting into any of the events or buy any event tickets and just roamed the convention hall. But even with that, I was able to play about 24 games, and most of the games that I wanted to play. This year I didn't cosplay. I usually cosplay when I go to Gen Con, but it's mostly because of laziness. Earlier this spring I was starting to put together a One Punch Man costume, which is relatively easy. I sort of got lazy and didn't really want to figure out how to do the makeup. One of the things I love about Gen Con is seeing everyone in costume, and so people do great work. And I did post a video of the costume parade, and I will provide a link for you to click on if you wanted to see that. My strategy when I go to Gen Con is I actually don't buy any games, because typically I can get them for cheaper once they retail and hit the online gaming stores. I'm fortunate enough to live by Miniature Market here in St. Louis, so I can actually order and get it there, typically for about 30% off of MSRP. And this year I actually spent the most amount of money not on games, but actually in getting a 3D printer. So many of you know that I create my own terrain out of casting plaster and using molds. And I'll still continue doing that, but for a long time I've been looking into 3D printing for terrain purposes. And one of the biggest reasons for that is it is a little bit of a hassle to transport plaster cast pieces. And even though the plaster that I use is very strong, almost like porcelain, it's still not as easy as throwing things in a bag and being able to just take them places, or being able to throw them around and not worrying about it breaking. I went by Fat Dragon Games, and they did a Kickstarter a while back of a dungeon set, and I actually purchased the STL files for that. And they really helped me a lot figure out what kind of printer, and prices have gone down enough, and so I pulled the trigger and finally bought a 3D printer. And that should be arriving in the next couple of days. So that's going to be my next big project. I'll probably provide a video of that at some other point. Let me go ahead and get on to my list of games. A couple caveats before I give you this list. The demos that I played range from as short as 5 minutes to as long as 45 minutes. So the degree in which I really got to know these games is fairly limited and somewhat shallow. So just take that into consideration. These are the ones, at least as I demoed them, I found them intriguing or something that I would really consider getting at some point. The other caveat also is that there are a couple of games that I really wanted to try and probably would have made it on my top games list, but because I wasn't able to demo them because they were very popular and crowded, or didn't have time to do it. And so the games that I really wanted to try but didn't have a chance to was London Dread, Harry Potter, Hogwarts Battle. And I actually pre-ordered that mostly because my daughter is super into Harry Potter, and I think this is a way to get her to actually play a game. A game called Covert, and Mansions of Madness 2. I really want to try that, but I didn't really push too hard to try that because I know that people in my game group are actually going to purchase that game. So, and then another one someone told me about was called The Dragon and the Flagon. You're in an inn drinking, and so not quite sure, but someone said that was really a funny game. So with all of that, let's get to my top 9 list of games that I demoed that I really like. Now, I tried to make it 10, but really it's just 9. But number 9 is a Western miniatures game called Exiles, and this is by Mindworm Games. And these are a group of guys that basically had a passion for created this game, and so it was just fun talking with them. Very simple gameplay, but what I like about it is that it's a campaign. It's almost an RPG miniatures game, which is something that I really like. And also because of all my Shadows of Brimstone stuff, I've sort of been on the lookout for a good miniatures sort of skirmish or war game using Western theme. Number 8 on my list is Drakerys. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but this is a miniatures war battle game between two people, and it's by Don't Panic Games, but I think the developers are actually French because all of the demo people had French accents. So having a simple rule set, having quick resolution of combat is key, and Drakerys had all of those things, and they have awesome looking minis. So this was kickstarted a while back, and I think they're fulfilling, and it's going to retail now. Number 7 is Secrets of the Lost Tomb by Everything Epic Games. This is very interesting. It's a dungeon crawl / mix of Mansions of Madness with a Pulp Fiction kind of theme to it. And so I love dungeon crawls, and so what was intriguing for me about this game was the theme was so different than anything else that I had seen. So I liked all of the different things that was involved with the game, and how there were a lot of banes and boons that could affect your character, that it could play, I think, up to 6 players. So to me it was very interesting, and you're fighting monsters and things that you uncover down there. So this was the one game that I seriously thought of purchasing there at Gencon, primarily because I couldn't find it on online stores. This game has been out for a while now, and so there was a deal at Gencon and I could have purchased it. But in the end, I didn't buy it because I kept thinking in my head, well, I have 2 great dungeon crawls that I'm in now, Shadows of Brimstone as well as Kingdom Death, and I thought, would I really play this game over those 2 games? And ultimately the answer was no, so I ended up not purchasing the game, but definitely this game looks fun and intriguing. So that's 7 Secrets of the Lost Tomb. Number 6 is a super popular game called Cry Havoc, and I wanted to demo this game because of Dice Tower's enthusiastic plug for this game. It's like a more complicated Nexus Ops, sort of area control on a map, but very simplified. I like Nexus Ops, but I've only played it a couple times because it's too simple for me. What Cry Havoc does is it creates asymmetry, because the 5 possible players that you can play are very different from each other, and how they play is very different from each other, which is not true of Nexus Ops. So that's something that I really like, and you have your own faction card deck that give you abilities as you're battling, and you fight each other almost instantly. So unlike Twilight Imperium, where I feel like you're spending hours just ramping up your forces, but then you only have 1 or 2 battles. It's such a disappointment. But the thing I like about Cry Havoc is in the first round you can enter into battle. And the battle system really is unique. It's something that I've never seen before, where you're placing your soldiers on these various places, and then you lay down cards to move them around to see whether or not you win those objectives. And so it really is intriguing. And so that might be something that I'll purchase, but it was completely sold out, and even the pre-orders are sold out as well, so I have no idea when this game is going to be available. But Cry Havoc by Portal Games. Number 5 is Last Friday by Ares Games, and last Friday I heard from a number of reviewers that this was a game that they wanted to try out, and basically Last Friday is Friday the 13th. It's a Friday the 13th board game, but probably because of licensing they can't use that name. Basically, we're on the board, you are the campers trying to stay away from the Jason character who's trying to murder you. A player is controlling Jason, his location is secret, and you're trying to move around. You know, the first chapter you're trying to find safety inside of a cabin, and then the second chapter you're trying to find clues. The third chapter everyone starts getting slaughtered. And I don't remember what the 4th chapter is. It was super fun. I found that there was a lot of tension because you're not quite sure where Jason is, and it fits thematically, which is great. I'm usually not into horror themed games, but this game was really fun. Number 4 is Gloomhaven. And so this is a game that I kickstarted, and I actually tried it out when it was kickstarting, I think about a year and a half ago. there was a print and play version, and I actually printed out all the pieces, and it's actually why I made the 3D board in the first place, because I was so excited about this game. And sure enough, I talked with Isaac, and he told me that the game is going to be coming out in the next couple of months. So I am super looking forward to this game. It's a legacy game, actually, sort of a dungeon crawl legacy game. And you know, the only legacy game that I've ever played is Pandemic Legacy, and I thought that was a great game. But Gloomhaven sort of fits more in the theme that I like, fantasy theme, and so I'm looking forward to that. Obviously, I'm super excited about it. I made a 3D board, and in fact, I offered to Isaac, the developer of the game, use of my 3D board for his demos, and so he agreed, and I actually went early, and he ended up using my board for his demos, which I'm super glad that he could do that. Number 3 is another super popular game that a lot of reviewers talked about before Gen Con, and that is SeaFall by Plaid Hat Games. SeaFall is actually another legacy game, but what's different about SeaFall, and SeaFall is set sort of your ship captains exploring different places. I thought it was a pirate game, and you can sort of be like a pirate, but it's not so much you have to be a pirate. The thing I like about SeaFall that's different from Gloomhaven or Pandemic is that you're competing against the other players rather than working cooperatively. And so there's something about that I like. I tried the demo, so I got a real taste and flavor of the game, and I am super excited about that. I think SeaFall will be really fun, so I'll probably end up actually purchasing that game. My number 2 game is Forbidden Fortress by Flying Frog Games. So what is Forbidden Fortress? Flying Frog Games had a big announcement during Gen Con this year where they announced a new expansion that they're going to kickstart in October called Forbidden Fortress. And so basically it's Shadows of Brimstone, another sort of big box set, but it is set in Japan, in a Japanese setting with Japanese lore. So I was very excited to hear about that, and we'll definitely be kickstarting that when it comes out. So Forbidden Fortress. So my number one game, and this was a game that no one knew about because Fantasy Flight Games kept this under wraps, and it was a surprise announcement, and it is RuneWars, the miniatures game. A number of their other games are based in the world of Terranoth. Battlelore, which is another miniatures game, is set in the world of Terranoth, as well as Runebound, one of their first games. When I heard that they were coming out with a miniatures game, and when they made this announcement using base mechanics of Star Wars X-Wing, which is one of my most favorite miniatures tabletop games, I was super excited. Because as much as I love Star Wars, I like fantasy theme even more. And so the fact that they were combining one of my most favorite mechanics of Star Wars X-Wing with using the dials, with the movement templates, and yet rolling the dice to attack and resolve attacks is super easy. You're only rolling a couple of dice each time. And so the same is true for RuneWars, where you have these unique dials, and with RuneWars you have actually dual dials, so it's a little bit more complicated, and the initiative is actually hidden, so you don't know when your units are going to go relative to the other person's units. And so all of this, even though the gameplay is super simple, I think requires a depth of strategy on your part. And so when I demoed it, I had a lot of fun with it, and even though it's a 1v1 game, one of the great things about it, I feel like, is it really can be played 2v2 or 2v1 or multiple people, and it's quick. The box says that it's 90 minutes. When we were demoing it, we were able to go through 3 rounds, and the limit is 8 rounds. And so we're not talking hours and hours for each battle. Again, that's something that I really like. And the miniatures are great. And I've mentioned elsewhere that my favorite rule set for tabletop miniatures is actually Dead Zone from Mantic, but I just don't like their miniatures. And so this sort of is the best of both worlds, where the rule set is very simple, very easy to pick up, very easy to explain. The game is short, just like Dead Zone, but deep in strategy, and the miniatures are good. The miniatures are quality. Obviously not as good as sort of the standard of the industry, which is Games Workshop, but for me, they are great. They're a big step above Mantic's Miniatures. And so I am super excited about this game. I will buy probably multiple starter copies of this game so that I can have huge armies, and I'm looking forward to what will hopefully be more and more expansions that come out that isn't just the undead or humans, but hopefully elves, dwarves, and all the other sort of standard factions that you find in the fantasy universe. So number 1 is Fantasy Flight RuneWars Miniatures game. Supposed to come out Q1 of 2017, and so very excited, looking forward to that. Now there's a couple of games that I tried that I was pretty disappointed by, so I'm not going to spend as much time with those, but I did want to mention them. And so cool mini or not, I went over to the booth and tried out a couple of games, and I tried out Masmorra, which is Arcadia Quest, but as a dungeon crawl where you're only controlling one character and you're going through a dungeon. And but it's still competitive like Arcadia Quest. It's not a co-op. And I didn't like that game so much because I just found it a little bit too simple, and I was not compelled by the monsters being dice and you have your own figure. Mega Man, the board game by Jasco Games, I really wanted to like that game. Just because I love Mega Man, I love that the miniatures are cool looking, and I looked at the game and I thought, wow, this is a game that I could have my non-gamer friends play, because it looks simple enough. It looked like it could be simple enough for kids to play. But unfortunately, as I played it, it's super complicated and takes forever. It felt like the game would take, 2 or 3 hours to finish the scenario, and it wasn't compelling enough where I felt like, wow, this is really cool. I could play this for 3 hours. So I was disappointed by Mega Man. Moonquake Escape. I checked this out mostly because of Nick from Board Game Brawl. Really said he was interested in looking into this, but I really didn't think it was that great. Another game is Giant Killer Robots. This is going to be kickstarted, I think, in October as well. The minis look awesome. The play area looked really cool. You had buildings and everything, and the concept was really cool. But I found that the actual gameplay felt very similar to other games that I've played, and I sort of knew, again, I'll probably pick something else. I keep thinking that I will like card-based games, and I tried out Gruff by Studio Woe, and even though I thought that the gameplay mechanics were pretty good, and the overall concept was unique and fun, I just don't think I like card games. So I think I'm a miniatures guy. One game that I actually played an entire game was Vast, the Crystal Caverns. This game has players that are so asymmetric that every player has their own directions. I was the goblins. So the goblins had a two-sided page of directions of how to play that was different than the dragon or the human or the cave. The cave is actually a player. And so, which is very cool that this company made it so that these highly disparate play styles all work together in one game. And it does. It really works well together. But in my head, I thought most people that I know would not have the patience of reading through a whole sort of set of rules for themselves. And as we were playing that first game, I had a ton of questions that no one could answer because their set of rules were completely different than mine. And so I'm sure I played a ton of stuff wrong. But I can see why it's very popular, why a lot of people really like the game. But again, I need games that are relatively simple, very easy to sort of explain. Overall, my experience at Gencon was great. Looking forward to going again in 2 more years. I like that cycle because it allows for sort of games to build up so that when I go I can try out all these other games and not just the new ones that come out. And look forward to possibly cosplaying 2 years from now. And maybe I can get my middle child, my daughter, to come with me this time. So until 2018, I'm signing off.